Welcome, everyone, to another amazing episode of the Average Ontario Anglers Fishing Podcast. Today, we have a pretty cool episode. Last episode, we talked all about shore casting for salmon, and I noticed a lot of you guys listen to it, but a lot of you guys, you like catching the bass, and salmon don't really interest you. Can't blame you. Sometimes they're a bit smelly. Today, our episode is all about fall bass fishing, which is, as me and Andrew learned over the years, a little more tricky than summer bass fishing for us rookies. And we have with us a special guest. We have Kris Totosko. How's it going, man?
Not bad, not bad. How are you guys?
Well, we're here. We had a
Yeah,
little
we
bit of
made
technical
it.
difficulties.
We made it, yeah.
Hopefully Andrew and Kris weren't, talking about me before I could log in. But
No, we were
Actually,
just
no.
sharing our hot spots, and unfortunately Jesse's not aware of them anymore. So
I know. As I came in, they were like, man, and you slam them all day long. And I was like, where? And you're like, don't worry about it.
Yeah. We actually have the same walleye spot, which is kind of crazy, on the same lake. By accident, I found
know.
it this year, and Andrew knew about it for the last few years.
I know
So-
exactly where you're talking about. Andrew only has one walleye spot.
Oh, really?
But
And
anyway,
is that it, Andrew?
I think
Is
so.
that it?
No,
Oh, wow.
no. Jesse's thinking of another lake that we often go to. So Jesse's aware of that spot existing because we fish there together, but I don't think he recognizes it as a walleye spot.
okay.
At least not we've targeted there together. So
We should all go together to the same spot one day.
I'm down.
I will,
would be-
for sure.
It would be pretty crazy because, I go out, I don't know. My wife hates me, but I go out 2 to 3 times a week if I can. It's especially in the summertime or the fall. Like fall, I'd be out all the time. Early spring too. It's just like the best times to fish in the year for me. It's like late fall and early spring. For I target everything from crappie to pike. Muskie, I'm not a huge fan. I'm not gonna lie to you. I know you guys do a lot of muskie, but it's not because of I don't want to do it. It's just I've never actually got a chance to target them as much as I should have. I've gone to some crazy muskie lakes.
Mhm.
This year, I've noticed more muskie than I've ever had in my life, and especially in the Cuartas. I think Pigeon has one of the biggest populations of muskie I've ever seen.
Mhm.
I never knew that. And that was like a week prior to the bass opener. I went there without rods in my kayak, and next thing you know, muskie were everywhere. So that's, I don't know if that's a secret lake, but
No,
If
it's
you want a
definitely
muskie-
not.
It is. Don't say it.
go to Pigeon because muskie is definitely the place. Pigeon is loaded with muskie in my eyes, and I fish everywhere else, and I don't see as many, except sturgeon. Sturgeon is the secondary spot for me.
Well, they're connected, so,
Yeah, that's why.
So anyway, in case anyone is wondering, they may be thinking, who the heck is Kris Totosko? So I'm not going to, I know a lot of these people, we have them on as expert guests, and all these people are like, never heard of the guy. Well, you probably should have. Kris Totosko is a super accomplished angler, especially when it comes to the kayak fishing in Ontario. Now, if you've ever heard of the OKBT, which stands for the Ontario Kayak Bass Trail, Kris is a high-ranking, like if you see the tournament standings, usually he's in the top 5. He's pretty insane. Didn't you win Angler of the Year last year?
2 years ago, yeah. Last
Oh,
year,
okay.
one of my buddies took it, and then I was, I think, third for Angler of the Year points.
That's awesome.
Yeah, no, I tried. This year, I'm leading for Angler of the Year. We have one more event left. And I'm not going to lie to you, the prize is amazing. So it's that, like I said, it's another LVS 34 plus unit with a 10-inch screen. So it's a $4,000 prize that Radio World provides for the anglers, for the OKBT. So it's something to actually really fight for. Like, it's a $4,000 prize. Even if you already got one, you won one, you can put the new one on your kayak and take the old one and try to sell it, whatever, right? Like, I don't know, you could do that.
And he's being kind of modest because that's an accomplishment to be Angler of the Year. Because I know from personal experience, I'm pretty much never even angler of the boat. So that is an accomplishment to be in competition for that stuff and winning and consistently placing, high up. So we are excited to have some more information from Kris.
Yeah, no, I
Absolutely.
sorry to to disturb you there, but yeah, no, I fish kayaks. I just started literally within the last 4 or 5 years. I've always been a boat fisherman, but like I used to fish out of a bass boat back in the day, and back in the day I used to fish off the shore. Like that was my number one. I grew up on Oshawa Creek, Newcastle, Wilmont Creek, Bowmanville. Like that's all the areas that I used to fish, to the point where I met Cooper when he was a baby, like, a kid, like 8 to 10 years old, like walking and fishing for carp down the street off of the bridge by his house. And I was fishing for pike, not even knowing that it's Cooper. There's just some little blonde kid that walks around, pretty much with a diaper on him, and he's already fishing.
That's awesome. We like talking to anglers of all different areas around Ontario, but as well as the different people like guides, tournament anglers, local hammers, guys that fish out of bass boats, guys that fish out of kayaks, guys that fish out of off the shore as well. So it's great because we know Kris has fished out of all of those things. So it'll be good. We have a few questions about kayak fishing as we go through the episode, because I know that is something like small craft angling in general is something that a lot of people are interested in, because it's a very affordable way to get into bass fishing or even competitive bass fishing. But before we get into that, we are going to start off the episode with our first segment, which is our interesting fishing fact. And to handle that, as always, we have the man with the new hat and the beard, Andrew.
And I just want to say, I have not chosen a creepy one this time. It's not weird. This is actually an interesting fishing fact that may help you understand how to target fish more effectively.
I'm disappointed.
Oh, just wait till I'm done. Think of how you'll feel then.
It might be still creepy.
So we had talked a little while ago, and we've referenced it many times on the show, is about the lateral line. And I want to do research into how does it actually work? Because are you aware, have you ever done research, Jesse, into how a lateral line works?
All I know is it's just like a series of sensitive nerve endings. That's about it.
Yeah. How about you, Kris? Have you ever given any thought to it?
No, none.
What
do you mean by lateral line?
Just kidding.
You mean on a
fish?
On a fish? Okay.
So
have I ever given any thought? No, not really.
Well,
no.
We're about to today.
All right, let's hear some news.
Most bony fish have them. They'll have a lateral line. I kind of focus this around bass because oftentimes that's when you hear about lateral line, or often speaking about, bass keying in on baits and bait fish and whatnot. So it is visible. You can see a faint horizontal line that runs from behind the gill cover right to the base of the tail. It's a full length of the body of the fish. The main canal lies under the scales, right on there. You'll see kind of a seam, it looks like, in those scales. What it is, it actually has pores, small openings in the scales on that line. They connect the water outside to the lateral line canal that's inside that fish. This is kind of very scientific to start with, just so we can kind of get an understanding of what it is. The canal runs just under the skin and are filled. It's a fluid that transmits water pressure changes. Neuromasts are inside the canal clusters, and they are the sensory organs. And each the neuromast, so a single neuromast, has hair cells and a cupula. This is a little cap that sits on top of a hair kind of thing. And then there's nerve connections that attach to those neuromasts. So to picture this in your mind, if you will start from the bottom, you have your nerves going to a hair that has a small little cup on the top of it. That sits in a little cavity that has fluid in it with a small barrier. So anytime there's a pressure change on the outside, it's then affecting those little sensitive hairs that's then sending that signal to the brain of the fish, down the nerves. So that's how it works. So anytime there's a water disturbance, something like a minnow flicking its tail or a spinnerbait pulsing, vibrations in the water, it creates tiny pressure waves underwater, and then it hits those pores, goes into the canal, that changes the fluid pressure in those little, on the neuromasts, and then it bends little hairs, and it sends that signal to the brain. And then by doing so, it can interpret, hey, like this one felt this much pressure, this one felt this much pressure down here in the body, this one a bit further felt this much. And it can actually help it not only feel the same thing, but it can kind of triangulate, it can know the size, what kind of vibration it was caused by, where it is. Like, it's super, like, it's sending so much more information than I originally thought. Before, I just thought, yeah, you feel like vibration underwater. Okay. Like this is a whole other superpower of sensory organ that these fish have. It's kind of like spider sense from the comic books, except this is real life.
I believe what you're saying, to be
Yeah.
honest. I know it sounds ridiculous, but I had a buddy that told us the same thing, and I don't know if you guys know him, Ryan Crowley. He fishes out of a boat. He does like all the shootout, like he fishes bass tournaments out of with his brother. And he is, if you listen to what Andrew just said, oh my God, if you ever listen to Ryan, actually you guys would get along very well. That's all I can say. And I'm telling you, this guy is another wave. Like the way he says how the fish triangulate with eyes on the bait and how many colors they see, he knows everything about it. I'm sitting there, I'm like, so
I would get along with him, it sounds like.
yeah, no, a little bit geeky, a little bit geeky, but I'm
Makes
telling you,
sense.
he's the guy. You know how I was telling you about the story of me walking the creek and not making the vibrations because I think the fish can feel the vibration from probably 200-300 feet away, especially rainbows.
Mm-hmm.
He's like that. He'll like, and that same with me. That's what I feel like I learned that maybe from him, but I've never seen him actually fish on the creek. But I heard that's how he is. He's very quiet. He doesn't make much noise, and I feel that's how the fish know that you're there.
Mm-hmm.
They can feel the vibrations, but they have to feel it somewhere, and that's what you just explained.
Yeah, and that's how they feel. That is how they feel vibrations. They don't have another sensory organ. I mean, we as humans, we will feel like a large shock wave or something. But again, if you're sitting in a pool and then someone dabbles their finger on the other side, you're not going to feel it. Fish do. That's the mind-blowing thing about it.
Yeah.
So what they use it for is they're avoiding predators. Think of like a small bass. They have to avoid like a pike coming by or a heron walking along the bank. Schooling fish will use it so they don't bump into each other. That's why they can be so like instantaneous with their reaction times, because it's the direct feeling of the vibration to their brain to actually then trigger all the muscles. It kind of cuts out a middleman of having to wait for a larger vibration or them to get too close. They can pick up on it instantaneously. But they also use it for environmental awareness. So we think of, we often talk about barometric pressure changes, stuff like that, how it can affect fish. So they can not only feel the pressure that is caused by like obstructions and whatnot in the water, but it's all about the pressure change. So they believe that perhaps this lateral line is another reason why it can kind of turn down bass's desire to feed, because it might be getting overwhelmed or something by the pressure that's surrounding them. It's kind of picking up on too much interference, as it were. Perhaps that's one theory about that.
That's interesting. Like I've never even thought of that.
Yeah, because that whole lateral line is actually based on the pressure in those fluid-filled sacs. And another cool thing is they've actually noticed that bass specifically, they're tuned to low frequency vibrations from 10 to 200 hertz range, which is the similar vibration of common prey like shad, minnows, and crayfish. So they can pick out what vibrations or frequencies are natural, or something forage, or something a predator. They don't just feel like, oh, there's some movement there. They're identifying what the vibration is caused by how the vibration feels. So it is most sensitive to water displacement, water movement, rather than just like sound waves. So again, if you were causing a big splash, they would pick up on that sooner than, let's say, sonar underwater. They're getting they'll notice something more if it's water displacement rather than just a small sound wave going through the water. But in simplest terms, just to reiterate, I had some help in just bringing it down to one sentence, essentially what I just said. So sorry, everyone. You wasted 10 minutes when I could have just said this one sentence. But it says the lateral line in a bass is a fluid-filled pressure sensory array wired into the nervous system, giving them a kind of sixth sense for movement around them. So that's like a whole other, like we talked before about superpowers, but man, that is something that all bony fish have pretty much. All the fish that we're trying to target, we have to combat not just the fact that some have good vision, some are just, more wary or seemingly smarter than us, but they also have a whole other sense that we have to combat because we have no experience feeling it.
That's amazing. At first I thought, wow, this is boring. Towards the middle, I still thought it was boring, but at the end you wrapped it up nice and clean there. That's interesting. That's a perfect example of an interesting fishing fact, because it's something that we all anglers have to deal with, but I've never even thought about that. Like I've thought about it slightly, but I didn't really know exactly how it works. So that's pretty cool. Thanks, Andrew. For once, it wasn't about pus or weird bacterias.
Next week, giant toe biting beetles.
Oh, so anyway, it's getting a little bit chilly at night, isn't it, boys?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was out fishing yesterday, and I actually put on the dreaded pullover towards the sundown there. It was a little bit chilly, and that got me thinking, you know what? Fall is in the air. And for many people, that may be terrifying. A lot of people like bass fishing in the summer. You got frog fishing, lily pads, and nice hot days and getting sunburned. But as soon as the nights get a little bit chilly, what happens is a lot of anglers, they start finding it a little more difficult to find and catch bass. Me and Andrew have been there. That's why we're talking to Kris Totosko, because he is someone that, as we mentioned, knows a little bit more than most people, which is why we have him on as an expert guest. Again, as an accomplished tournament angler and a kayak fishing nut, we are very happy to learn from him. We're going to jump in. This episode is all about kind of the fall transition here we have in Ontario, but this could be applicable to many different places because we have listeners from all around North America and a lot of random places around the world too. So I don't know if this will, be applicable to our one or two listeners in Africa, but who knows? If it is, let us know.
Applicable there. That'll be interesting, actually. They can use whatever I say. That's actually be hilarious.
Just on the other side of the globe there.
Yeah. Well, some people
Nile
in Poland
perch are just like largemouth.
Exactly. They're just 18 times bigger. So I thought we could start off with kind of just like a basic of the fall transition. So as we mentioned, it's getting a little chillier at night, and summer's kind of, at this point, is kind of fading, as you could say. By the time this podcast comes out, it's pretty much September at this point, and that means it's not fall yet, but it's right around the corner. Another few weeks, it'll officially be fall. But we're gonna ask Kris a question to start off. What changes in bass behavior when we go from those hot dog days of the summer and it starts to get a little bit more cooler in early fall?
In my personal opinion, is the temperature. Like the temperature of the water, when that starts going lower and lower, I think the fish realize that winter is coming and they got to put on some weight. So that means the feeding becomes a lot heavier for them, especially early fall. I think that's when they start going on, like they start feeding a lot heavier than any other time of the year. I think like later in the fall, I think they kind of they get lazier, but I think beginning of the fall, which is like September, middle, like probably second to third week of September to first week of October, I think the best bite happens then, unless something weird happens, like where we have that, what do you call that, the weird summer, what's the word for
the
it?
El Nino?
Indian summer?
Indian summer, that's the word. Yeah, if that happens, then the fish go, shoo, what's going on here, right? Like there's even cases where fish decide to spawn again, which is kind of crazy at the end of September. I've seen fish spawn, I think, every month of the year. Not every month of the year, but like in the summertime, I've seen them like where I was like, what? That fish is still on the bed, and it's a bass. Usually, it's a bass. I'm not looking for a pike or something. I more recognize the bass. But early like I said, the second week of September to first week of October, that's when the heaviest, feeding happens for most of the bass, I think. And then from the first week of October to middle of November, I think that's another time. But I think it's just at that point they start grouping up. The bass, and I don't know about pike, but the bass definitely start grouping up they become like wolf packs, and they start, getting a lot crazier to feed at that point. Where if you find a group, you don't find usually one fish at that point. You find a group of them. You never, like right now, like I said, from the second week of September to first week of October, usually it's all over the place in my head. Like as soon as you find any good weed, you kind of, that's where the bait fish live. That's where the bait fish are sitting, and that's where you'll find most of the fish, especially early, like the first fall type of grouping up before they actually get into like the wolf packs.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've noticed last year, like late last year, I fished almost until the end of November. And I had one spot on one lake where every single time I went there, it was just on fire. But it was only because there was a healthy weed bed there. And that healthy weed bed kept all the bait fish in it. And when it kept the bait fish in it, everything was there. I mean, walleye. Like, it was kind of crazy because the weed bed was in 8 feet of water. And the walleye were staging out like 14 feet. And any kind of bait that came out of the wall, like out of the weed, they would get destroyed in that 14 feet. And then you would get pike and bass mixed in all in a weed bed. Like, I had buddies with me and they fished the whole lake. There was probably 4 of them. And I said, I got on the phone. I'm like, hey, you guys got to come down here. Don't waste your time anywhere else in the lake. Get your butt over here. And it was loaded because of the bait, the weed structure, which was still green weed, which was still healthier weed. And that's what I think kept a lot of the bait fish in it. So I don't know if that answers your question. I really spun out there, but yeah.
No, that does, because I think it has to do with a lot of species. Like when we talked last year about bass, walleye, also muskie. It's in the summer, like say muskie and bass, for instance, they're kind of just wherever.
Everywhere.
Some people
2
are like, oh,
feet
the
to
muskie go
30 feet.
shallow, oh, they go deep. Same with bass. It's like there's some in all areas. And as you get into fall, I think most anglers may have a harder time catching the fish is because they're not spread out. They're more grouped up together, and it's just finding those fish that are grouped up that may be difficult for some people. So maybe we could talk a little bit about basic locations in the fall. You kind of dabbled into it, but as the weather starts to get a little bit chilly, not super fall yet, but like the end of summer, the beginning of fall, where are some spots, like say you're going out on a lake, like in the Kawarthas, for instance, where's going to be the first few spots that you kind of look for fish before it gets too cold?
2 to 4 feet of water. Because I can still see. So, like with my eyes, I can still see what's going on. If I see bait fish in the shallows, like, a bunch of like minnow type baits or sunfish or something small, that's my thinking at least. I don't know if that's true for everybody else, but 2 to 4 feet, if I can see sunfish or any other bait fish in that transition, 2 to 4 feet, that means something wants to eat them in my eyes. That's because fish don't have jobs. Fish's number one job is to eat, and they do it throughout the day. That's their pattern. They either do it in the morning, they do it at night. They choose whenever they want to, and that's how I approach it. I go from 2 to 4 feet if I can see them, and if I can see the bait, then I kind of stay in that area, and then I figure out what they want to eat. So I start throwing either a moving bait. If they don't want that, then I start throwing something that's slower moving, aka I'll go from the fast moving baits. I'll go from like jerk baits to spinner baits first thing, to see if they're active, if they want to bite something that moves. And if that doesn't work, then I move down to a Senko most of the time, to be honest. I know, or a drop shot or something like that. I'll throw a drop shot in 2 or 4 feet of water. People might think that's crazy, but you know what? If the fish is hungry, I think it's going to come and eat something, whatever just hit the water, like they'll feel that, what you were talking about. They'll feel the vibrations and they'll go over and then check it out if it's an easy meal, I think. So, and I've been pretty successful with it. I'm not going to lie. And then if I don't find them in 2 to 4 feet of water, guess what? I'm moving up to 6 to 8 feet of water. And then I'm trying to find like a weed line. And then it becomes, is it's either going to be a really choked up weed line or is it going to be a couple weeds, whatever. And then I'm going to kind of pay attention to, are they in the heavy weeds or in the spread out weeds? And then if they're not there, then it becomes a little bit heavy, like, because at 6 to 8 feet you can still see them. Like most of the time in the Kawarthas, some lakes they're pretty dirty. So then I move to that 10 to 15 feet of water, and I try to find a weed line, because weed lines are always like an actual, you go from a weed to no weed, and I stay right on that weed line, because that's where they have to be. If they haven't been in from the 2 to 4, in that shallow area, I think that's their next ambush point. And that's where they're gonna be. And I mean, if they don't want to bite, there's obviously some kind of a change in the temperature, or some kind of a like storm moving in, or something is happening weather-wise. I don't really go crazy into detail like a lot of people will go, oh, because the barometrical pressure changed to this and that and this, and I'm like, buddy, throw the spoon, throw this, throw that, throw 10 different things. If they don't work, well, It's called fishing for a reason, because sometimes you're just not going to catch them. Yeah, sure, there's guys that will always catch them. Maybe. I've never really met somebody that says, oh, well, actually, I've met a million people like that. They tell you they always catch them. There's times where I go out there and I'm telling you, like, I can have, like I said, I can have a live scope on the kayak and I can find the fish, but they don't always want to bite. They're like us. At some point, we might have a headache and we just might not want to eat at that point.
It's true.
Is there a spot, like you were mentioning, again, like weed beds as being green weeds as holding fish? Because again, bottom of the food chain, you have all your minnows there, right? Are there spots, like when you're looking for spots in the lake, have you noticed any areas where you're more likely to find still green, like green weeds in the fall, like by river mouths or, you know, warm bays? Like what would you kind of look for if you were on a fresh lake and like, I need to find a green weed bed to fish it? Where are you going to look to find one?
What you just said, like, but then it comes down to electronics too. You might have to have some electronics on your boat. We look at the temperature. Like if, you know, you go to, you know, the east side of the lake and the temperature is, you know, 64 degrees, and then you go to the, you know, west side of the lake and the temperature is 62. I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but I think the bait fish dictate that, and they'll go to 64. They'll go to the warmer water. I don't know why, but I think that's where there's still life happening, and that's where the bait fish are going to be feeding on something, and something is going to be feeding on the bait fish. That's how I look at it. And then, of course, most of the times when I fish, like, I look for points, any type of a point on the lake, because that's always stuck in my head. I always heard Bassmaster. I watched a million episodes, and they always tell you, like, any point on any lake, there's always, that's where the fish kind of hang around. Like, that might not be first thing in the morning, but you just always check the points, because that's where the bigger fish will come to feed on smaller fish. So, but
another thing too, just to add to finding the weed line, because that's something that, you know, me and Andrew do a little bit of musky fishing in the fall, and the same thing. We're looking for green weeds, but we're looking for weed lines. I remember we talked to Bobby Belmonte last year, and he was saying, if you get your Navionics, like, you can, if you don't have fancy electronics, you can get the Navionics app on your phone. It is a paid subscription, but it's not super bad for the year. You can actually highlight certain depths. And usually, like, it depends on the lake, of course, but in a lot of the lakes we fish, the weeds stop growing in like 12 to 15 feet of water. Depending. Most of the time, right? So on my Navionics app, I have 12 to 15 in red. So I know that as I'm fishing along the lake, this red area likely has a weed line in it if there's weeds there. So that's one way that I find weed lines, because again, like you said, if you're not finding them shallow and you kind of just work your way out, and the weed line is pretty much, the outside weed line is the last place that the fish are going to go before they're in the abyss of the depths, which, you know, the fish may be swimming in 70 feet of water, but generally if they're looking for food, they're going to be in the weeds where the food is. So fish can be randomly anywhere, but you have to focus your energies on prime spots where they're feeding, right, to catch them.
I think so. That's, like I said, that's their job, right? Their job is to eat as much as they don't, you know, they might go to that 70 feet, but they're there for a reason too. They're probably, you know, for the deeper bait fish. Like, but those are deeper lakes. Like, Kawarthas are more, you know, you find like, when you're talking about how you're marking out the weeds, like different in the red spot, like you say, like, okay, this side should have a red, in red color, there should be a weed line. Okay, you go to the shallower spot that kind of just raises up from 15, 20 feet to 8, 10 feet. The first thing I do there, like, I'll drop something in the weeds to see, I'll rip out a weed with something to see what kind of condition the weed is in, because sometimes the weeds are crap. And then they're you can see that they're dying. Like, you can see, like, you know, it's not like, last year in November, I was still seeing, like, green milfoil, and I was like, oh my God, like, I'm like looking over and it's 8 feet. I'm like, that's healthy as hell. Like, that's nice to see. Like, I'm like, I'm going to stick around here until see what happens within, you know, I have to give it 20, 30 minutes of casting whatever until I see something bite. And it doesn't usually take that long to figure it out, especially if they're active. So, but
it's funny how green weeds in the fall are such a magnet to fish.
Yeah. It's just, I guess, nutrition or whatever you want to call it for them, right?
everything's there that they need. Like they can still hide in it to ambush, but as well,
Yep.
there's all kinds of food in there too. Like I remember Andrew was saying that crayfish too, like oftentimes we don't think, but they eat a lot of aquatic vegetation. So there's lots of crayfish in the weeds as well. There's little baitfish, sunfish, all the stuff that they're feeding. And again, like you mentioned before, they know winter's coming. Like they may not be smart enough to be like, oh, winter's coming. I have like, but naturally their brains like, you have to start eating because it's going to get harder to find food.
Yeah.
So they're going to obviously concentrate in areas with lots of food.
Yeah. The temperature, I think the temperature is the biggest key. That's what tells them, like for bass, like the temperature dictates how they spawn. So if that dictates, in my eyes, if a temperature dictates for a fish to go make babies, it obviously dictates other things, aka how I'm going to feed. That's how I've started looking at it, because they don't go and spawn because, it feels great. I'll do it when it's, 73 degrees or 78 degrees. They kind of do it because, everybody else is doing it in 58, like 55 to 64 type of area. And like they kind of, that's part of their reproduction, whatever you want to call it. But I'm not that scientific about it. I'm just saying, like, that's why I'm not even I don't even know how to use big words on this. But yeah, I just know the temperature dictates everything in the animal kingdom in the water. That's my personal opinion. I think a lot of people will agree with me on that, but because I've seen it firsthand.
Absolutely. So kind of squeezing in a kayak fishing question in this, because a lot of our listeners have small crafts. Are there any specific types of fisheries like lakes, river systems, that kind of thing, that in your opinion are better to fish from a small craft or a small tin boat or a small kayak, something like that?
Yeah, like Cahuertas, like I think they're the safest, like especially around here, like GTA area, like Cahuertas will be the safest because you can't really, obviously, like I hate fishing in the wind. It's not fun. I'll fish in the rain. I'll fish in like when it's boiling out, like hot as hell. But I hate the wind. I just, people are like, oh, but it triggers the fish. I'm like, I don't care. Like I hate when the wind is hitting my face and it's just throwing me all over the place. Like it's not fun. Like you want to be there when it's a little bit calmer. I think most of the action happens when it's calmer. Like I fish a lot of top water baits and stuff like that. I like to be able to see what I'm doing, and in the wind it doesn't really happen. So just for Cahuertas, for people to just concentrate on in the smaller craft, to stay in Cahuertas in the smaller lakes. Like don't go to Sturgeon or like, Sturgeon is a big. I was there a week ago or 2 weeks ago, last weekend. Not this past weekend, but the weekend before that, we had a kayak tournament there. And honestly, I got off. So the tournament started at 6:00 in the morning. I didn't get there until 6 because it was raining. I got really lazy that day. I hated myself because I had a tournament on Skoogog the day before. And at 1:00, I got off the water, which I've never done. It was 4-footers, and I was going across the water, and I'm like, what am I doing here? Like, it's not safe. It's an $85 tournament, like a kayak tournament, and I'm like, it's just not worth my life. So I made the call to just call it. Like, as much as I can go and hide in a bay or do whatever, I was just mentally beat up. I just said, you know what, this isn't fun. Like, to be out there. Choose smaller lakes if you can, especially in a smaller crafts, like in the kayaks. I'm really good at kayak fishing, I believe. Like I have a very stable kayak, which I can stand in waves if I have to. But 4-footers, it's not cool when you're kind of disappearing behind the wave and you're going, okay, is this really worth $85? It's not for a tournament. So it's not worth your life. Fishing is not worth your life. So try to stay in smaller lakes if you can, especially with smaller craft.
Yeah, and there's tons of small lakes. Like we think of the Kahuertas because those are the areas that we generally fish, and lakes that we'll name on the podcast. But there's tons of small back lakes or lakes that are just a little bit farther than that, and in almost every direction, that it's almost better to fish them in a small craft. Like we talked about this with Jay Siemens a few months ago, and he was saying that up where he lives, there are lakes that you pretty much don't want to fish in a boat. Just like you may be able to get a boat in there, but you don't want to fish in the boat. And me and Andrew have similar lakes. that we could probably squeeze a boat in there. But at the same time, there's something about being in a small craft in some of these small lakes. You can get through some of the skinniest areas, like some of the neck downs that we get through. And we're like, oh, if we were in Andrew's boat, we wouldn't be able to get through. But with like the Sports Pal, we can just literally just jump over the beaver dam almost and get into the next lake and then slam fish. So there's definitely some lakes and river systems that it's definitely an advantage, I'd say, to have a smaller craft for sure, 100%. But again, like you said, you got to be careful. Me and Andrew we've been in some sketchy situations in small boats, and again, like you said, it's not worth the $80, or in our life, me and Andrew, it's not worth the $0 we'll win catching fish for no one. But
What's nice too is fishing like those smaller lakes, because again, if a smaller boat, you can navigate them easier, like Jesse said, or you can access them easier. But at the same time, for the plus side, they're usually more sheltered, because you don't have a kilometer stretch of water for the wind to pick up, or it's a river and it's winding around, so you'll have like every turn you're gonna have a nice spot for shelter somewhere. Wind usually follows us around as the day goes in this direction, but you can usually put a bit of effort and get away from it on these smaller bodies of water too. So that is another benefit, is they're smaller, you can access them, but you're also a little bit safer because it is more sheltered in general.
Yeah, you don't want to dump in the lake, especially in the late fall when it's cold, because in the summertime it's still serious, but it can be, you can get out and you'll be fine. You might lose some gear, but in the fall it becomes a matter of an actual danger of hypothermia. And we always think, I think we talked about this last year, Andrew, we always think that it has to be freezing cold wintertime to get hypothermia. It doesn't. It literally doesn't. You can get hypothermia in October or November easily.
For some reason, the temperature, I think, is 14 degrees in my head. I might be wrong, but I think it is way warmer than you think.
It's warmer than you think. Yeah.
All right, you can still suffer from it.
We're going to talk about something exciting now. So we kind of covered with Kris here areas in which fall fishing starts to get good, what to look for. We talked about, finding green weeds, finding bait fish, all that stuff. And now we're going to talk about one of our favorite things, and that is fishing lures, baits and presentations. We all love talking about that. We all buy too much of it. Kris has a Gagnon Sports hat on right there. Gagnon's is like 2 minutes from where I work. Sadly, I'm in there all the time.
Yeah,
if you ever see me in there, please give me money.
Yeah, I'm telling you. I was telling Andrew a funny story that happened last week, but my wife just got home, so I can't tell her nothing.
Okay.
Yeah,
it probably involves buying some fishing lures.
Oh.
We have got many people in trouble with their significant others, but hey, as we always say, the disclaimer, it's not our fault, it's your fault. So you got to be more
100% is my fault, but I can't control it.
Just Jesse and I always say, if you see us out in the store, come say hi. Just add to that, offer to buy what we're picking up that day. Just be like, hey, you know what? Put that on my bill. Like, we'd love
Sounds
it.
Good.
Come
No
up,
problem.
say hi, guys.
Just no problem. I'll just look what you guys got in there, so then I'll just be like, okay, I don't know these guys.
What you didn't see is I slipped an NRX Plus on the counter.
Yeah. Like, the new Stella by accident. Yeah, crazy.
All right, so talking about baits and presentations. So we're going to kind of do this in two sections. So you can answer them both at the same time if that isn't confusing. But we're going to talk about like right now, like early fall. And then we're going to talk about kind of like, I'd say like fall, like not late fall, but like October going into November. So what are your top 3 baits that you'd use right now in September, and then your top 3 baits that you'd use later in the fall?
Top 3? Oh, for sure a popper, like a top water bait. First thing in the morning, especially when it's calm or even on a calm day, I'll throw that all day if I can. Based on the fact that you might not get as many bites, but you'll get the good bites. Like you'll get the trophy fish. Personally, I've won tournaments on the top water bait. Actually qualified to go to the States, one of Stony Lake with a topwater bait. My buddy was laughing because I used the same bait but in 2 different sizes. And he's like, why would you do that? I said, because you know what? Sometimes when they miss it the first 2 times, in my head I go, I'm going to downsize it to a smaller one and they won't miss it. And that's how I look at it. So the topwater for the popper, I actually even have it here. And that's top secret, but a couple of my buddies already have it. It's a Uzuri bait, but that's the popper.
Are those like 3D?
Yeah, they're the 3D poppers, so they kind of flash or whatever. But the biggest thing is that I kind of started doing, which this is, again, my own personal...
The braided split rings.
I take the hook, like the stuff off of it, because when the fish has it in its mouth and it's not like it's free and it's able to spin, my hookup ratio went from probably 60%, 70% to about 95% hookup and loss. It's just giving away a little bit too much, because believe me, there's a couple guys in the kayak things where they started using it and they're like the angler of the year from last year, Mike Moran, he came up to me, he goes, buddy, I've been doing that since you told me, haven't lost a fish since. And I'm like, there's a reason. Maybe it's mental, but it works. So that's the number one bait for me for the fall. Well, for now.
Just to add to that, if you're listening to this and you can't see what he showed us, if you're not watching the video version, what he had on, instead of a split ring connecting his hook to his bait, he had a braided, basically
Braided
like
line.
a homemade braided line loop where you tie the hook onto the bait, which gives it a lot more freedom of movement. I noticed that a lot of guys that fish big glide baits for bass in the States do that too, because sometimes when a bass grabs a bait and it turns a certain way, it gets this leverage and the split ring stops the bait from turning, and it'll pop the hook right out.
Yeah, and that's how you lose the bait. Like how you lose the big fish. And I'm telling you this, maybe it's in my head, but it's statistically in my head, I stopped losing fish and I was like, holy crap, like this is good. Like I can't, like when I lose a fish, I go, what? Like that's confusing to me, because it used to be maybe like a regular occurrence, but now it's like, oh wow, well, that was strange. That never happens. Same thing with jerkbaits. Jerkbaits, I do the same thing. I tie up. I use braided line. It's a pain in the butt. It takes forever to do. I try to do like 2 jerkbaits at a time instead of like the whole tackle box. If I lose one, then I switch back, like whatever. But it's
Just don't use that trick when you're going for pike.
Or just a single strand of braid.
First time ever last week, and I keep telling one of my buddies that he goes to sturgeon. And anywhere else he also goes. I'm like, you're a musky fisherman, not a bass fisherman. His name is Rob. And I went to sturgeon, and sure enough, on that popper, I got a muskie. And I guarantee you, this thing was between 40 and 45 inches. When this thing flew out of the water, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And I couldn't. And the worst part is, I didn't snap it at the beginning. Like this thing is running, doing its thing, pulling my kayak around, and I'm like, son of a gun, man. Like, are you going to let go? Like, I just want my lure back, because $15. I just want my lure back, man. Sure enough, 3-4 minutes later, all I feel is, and I'm like, okay, gone. Yeah. But yes, that was the first time ever I hooked a muskie on top water on that bait. It's usually pike that take it, but.
Mm-hmm.
So that's number one. Number two, I use a faster moving bait, which would be like a spinnerbait, white spinnerbait, striking. I'm a one color person, and that's white. So
I love it.
Literally just white.
He's just holding up a tackle box full of spinnerbaits, and they're all white.
They're all white.
Spinnerbaits, buzzbaits.
And they're all the same. They're all the same. They're half-ounce striking spinnerbait. 2 willow things. And honestly, as long as you burn it, and you can work it different ways, you can let it sink about a foot underneath the water and do its thing. Or you can do what Andrew said today, which is you run it right on top of the water when you let the leaves, like the willow leaves, just hit the top of the water and they make that vibration. And I think it triggers the fish to go crazy. And I've seen that where I work it as a top water bait almost. Like I bring it up to the top, depending on how you burn it. And I know it sounds a bit crazy, but I also run a 50-pound line on it because anything can bite it. I've caught pike on it. I've caught bass on it. I've caught every other type of fish on it. Muskie. Actually, that's what I use for muskie for opener. And I caught 3 muskies and I lost another 4. And they were giants on this one lake up north. I have no idea what the name of it is. My buddy just took me to it. Actually, John Dean, the guy that runs OKBT, he took me to his muskie lake. And I was like, okay. And it was a great opener. I couldn't even believe it. I was like, holy crap. Like it's loaded with muskie in this place. I was not allowed to tell the name, but yeah.
That's okay. You'll just give us his phone number after, and we'll talk to him.
Okay, yeah. Sounds good. I told him, I said, buddy, you can't take this lake to your deathbed, eh? Like you have to either pass it on or do something. So, and the third bait, honestly, I'm a very simple guy, and I would just throw a Senko everywhere.
What color?
A green pumpkin, anything green pumpkin. And the worst part is, guys, like my buddies will be successful with like the black and blue flake or whatever. I throw it, I can't catch crap. And they throw it and they catch giants. And I'm like scratching myself on the head, like, how?
Jesse does well on bubblegum pink, and I'm just like,
When it's cloudy, that's about it.
But when I started bass fishing out of a boat, no word of a lie, Jesse, I threw the pink everywhere. And I mean everywhere. Under the docks, onto the rocks, onto the weeds. And that's all I threw. And I caught a lot of fish. And then I started fishing with guys that they were doing a lot more successful in bass tournaments. So I started copying what they were using. And one of my buddies from like back in the day, I used to fish out of his boat, and he's like a Senko master. So when I saw him casting it, I was like, I got to do what he's doing to be successful. And that's what started happening. Like, I can take a Senko and place it anywhere you want with, a quarter size hole. I can put it in there. I know it sounds a little bit weird, but it's big fish live. I think they live everywhere in the lake, but a lot of them do live where the structure is, because I think that's where their ambush point is. So if you find structure, aka weed, points, rocks, fish like to live on rocks. Those are very important too. Unless that rock has already been fished 100 times, you won't find a fish there. But if it's a random rock that you just found by accident, there's very likely a fish that owns that rock. So those are my three baits.
That fish relate to the most random things. Like, you'd be going along, and then all of a sudden there's just like a random rock in a bunch of weeds, and there's a fish there.
Yep.
So that's what all anglers, that's what you should always do, is when you're looking for fish, a lot of the water you fish looks exactly the same. It'll just be like a lot of weeds, an expanse of this. If you ever find anything different, like a point, like you said, or a rock, or like a log that's inside of the weeds as well, fish relate to random things like that. Whatever in their brain that makes them happy when they find a little thing. Remember that like classic photo of the bass in the swimming pool?
yes.
It was in the old fishing books, and they had a rock, and all the bass went near the rock, and then they had like a painted black line on the side of the pool, and all the bass went to the side with the line painted on the side. It just shows you how much that it's in their brain just to relate to things, even if it makes absolutely no sense. So if you ever see a black line painted in your local lake, make sure you check a pink Senko at it.
I'm telling you, that's how I see. I look for structure. What you just said, like if it's the whole shoreline, you see it's all sand, and you see white, like just right across or whatever, the lighter color, and then you see that dark stripe of who the hell knows what, like maybe a weed patch or I don't know what it is, but it's something different. That's where my eyes are going, and that's where I'm casting across, because maybe something lives on that. I don't know. Most of the time, to be honest, I wouldn't say most of the time, but probably 50-50, which is not a zero. There's something there. So I kind of throw at that.
And that is 100% transferable to wherever you're fishing. It's fish all over the world. I was fishing a little lake on the East Coast a few weeks ago, and fishing was hard that day. It was tough.
Yeah.
And so we were, getting a little bit of activity, but not much, and fishing all these like great weed beds, lily pads. And then I look across the bay, and like I see just a stump sticking out in the middle of the weed bed. So I'm like, all right, talk to my brother-in-law, Jacob. I'm going there. Just like paddle over, cast out instantly, fish on. I look over, I see another one over there. Paddle down. I'm passing the rest of the weeds now. I'm just going to these like random stumps I see, and I'm catching fish on every one of them. Like that's the thing. Like anytime I see something different, you gotta cast it.
That's where they live, in my eyes.
Oh, for sure. So as we get into fall, and now that the water is getting a little bit colder, oftentimes you hear to slow down your presentation. So when we're getting to this time of the year, maybe in the next month or so in October, do your 3 top lures change? And how are you going to adapt the way that you fish your presentation as the water gets a little more icy?
Yeah, they do change. Like at some point, like that spinner bait is going to become a jerk bait. Not that it's not now, but let's say a jerk bait will be a top 5. But I will go to a jerk bait instead of, when you pop the jerk bait, you go pop, 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 pop. Now, in the fall, you go pop, pop, and you leave it for 5 seconds. And then you go pop, pop. Most of the time, by the time you pop it, they're already loaded on. Because that 5 to 10 seconds, I'm a very patient person lately, which is, I think that's where the success came from because of the kayak. I slowed everything down I went from driving a boat at 100 kilometers an hour to driving a kayak at 5 kilometers an hour. It's quite substantial of a slowdown. So you got to plan differently. And everything. And when I go through water now, I go slower. So I see more. I see how the fish are reacting to my lures too. So, and I have live scope on my kayak, which is a bonus to have to see how the fish started reacting the last few years to your baits. And it's not, everybody thinks, okay, it's a video game, whatever it is. It's not a video game. You just get to see more what's happening in the water. You can present it differently. I used to run through the shoreline, like across the shoreline, 200-300 feet away from the shoreline, just cast as far as I can and pop, quick, like, and I was done with the shoreline. Now I go slower, and I get to do, instead of going quick, I go quick for 100 feet. Another 100 feet, I go slow down, and then I'll go to 45 seconds of waiting. Like I'll pop 3-4 times, and I'll stop. And my partners in my boat, they used to like look at me. They're like, "You all right? Like everything okay? Like you're something wrong with your equipment? Like something wrong with your reel? Like no, man. It doesn't always have to be fast." And honestly, since I slow down, there's a couple videos. I don't know if you guys seen them on my Instagram. There's one that's blew up, but it was like 250,000 views by accident. I don't know. It was a topwater video that I showed that I'm fishing 35 feet of water and I'm throwing topwater, and I just leave it there. I pop it 3-4 times, and then you see the fish. It takes them like 30 seconds to get up there, and they will sit underneath your bait. Like they'll sit and watch your bait. And it's such a cool experience to actually found this one spot back in a day, a long time ago. And now I got to use the live scope on it, and I got to see what's happening. Back in the day, I didn't have a live scope, so I just casted the bait out, and 45 seconds later, I had a fish on. 45 seconds to a minute. Now I get to see what they actually do. I cast it out, and they swim up, and then they sit there. And I got to, like in the video, I literally explain. I'm like, look, I'm going to throw it out there, 100 feet out there. That's where they are. I'm going to pop it 3 times, and the fish are going to come. And sure enough, I cast it out, pop, the fish go, and then they sit there. I'm like, look, it's about to hit it. And then 5 seconds later, it goes, and takes the topwater bait. And they're like, and I'm like, it's such a cool, like, the video worked out because it was actually like so funny because the way I commented it, and I have no idea what I'm talking about, but the way I'm commenting and everything happens, and I'm like, son of a God, that actually worked out. So the video was like, it got pretty popular. Let's just say that.
That fish was a paid actor for that
video.
100%.
Yeah. Him and his whole family I was poking the crap out of them that day. Like I literally probably caught 30 fish. My buddy one time when I took him to that spot, and I said, I'm like, buddy, just all you got to do is patience. Just one thing I will ask you, don't work your bait like you usually would. Cast it out and just leave it. The fish, like you said, they have the lateral line. They feel the vibration. And they're I think fish are, like I said, their job is to eat. So they'll come and look at whatever the hell that is because it could be an easy meal. And if it's an easy meal, well, guess what? If you have a coupon for McDonald's, you're going to use the coupon.
2 for 1, my favorite.
Yeah, that's it.
So what I'm getting from this is don't be afraid to slow down.
Very slow.
Just because the fish are, I think you mentioned this at the beginning of the episode, you're saying that, early fall, the fish, they're aggressive, they're feeding up like crazy. But as the season gets colder, they still want to eat, but they may not be as fast to get to the bait. I find the same is true with musky fishing, right? So like September, everyone loves that. Early October, fish are chasing, they're easy to catch. Or not easy to catch, but they're easy to get, running at your bait. Yeah. But as you get into like November, early December even, we've gone out fishing and the fish are still wanting to eat, but since the water's so cold, their metabolism is like, it's dropped down so much that they're lazy. They want some food, but it has to pretty much be near them or else they're like...
You have to put it right on their plate. Yeah, in front
I'm not
of their
going to
face.
swim 8 feet.
Yeah, no chance. No chance. It's true. I've seen that. So they won't do it. They literally won't do it. You have to like cast it, almost hit them in the head with it, and they're like, okay. And that the okay is part, like you literally hit them in the head and then you see the fish go, okay, not yet. Okay, I'm ready now. And it's like, what? Like, why did it take you so long, man? It's like, it's a burger. Grab it. So
I think that's something that I personally have to really tell myself is I'm a power fisherman. I love just fishing fast. Andrew's kind of the opposite of that. I went out musky fishing yesterday and I was burning bucktails all day and ripping rubber. And I'm like, I hate fishing slow. Like And sometimes, a lot of the time, probably, it's more effective sometimes to be slow. Like I know, like I was at Muskie Odyssey this year, and I was listening to John Anderson give a seminar, and he's like, super big muskie bigwig, right? And he was saying like, it's drilled into our heads, muskie like speed, you got to burn bucktails, you got to do this. He's like, but that's not true all the time. Sometimes they want it slow. And that's just speaking about muskie, but I think the same is with bass. Like a lot of the times we get programmed, rip a spinner bait, or, we're whipping in a chatter bait, or even if we're fishing like a plastic, we're working it way too fast back to the boat. But as Kris is saying, like you got to really, especially as the water gets colder, you got to really slow down. Almost like early spring pike fishing that me and Andrew do, where you're fishing the jerk bait and there's 30 seconds between cracks. It's like jerk, and then just wait. And the pike, I just picture the pike just slowly swimming up and looking at it. Just, we've seen that a few times in clear water when we're fishing. And I always picture on, those like, you'll see like a little YouTube short and they have an underwater camera down the hole, and it's just like, a hot dog on a hook or a herring or something, and a pike is just staring at it.
Yeah.
And it's like, why don't you want to eat it? And it's just like moving around slowly and just for like 5 minutes sometimes. And then finally, sometimes they take the bait, but not as that extreme with bass in the fall. But I feel like that's probably the case a lot of times. And that's why a lot of people aren't catching fish, is you're fishing way too fast.
Way too fast. I believe that 100%. That's not even, there's days, don't get me wrong, when the sun is like for some weird reason, we have a really sunny day and they trigger, like they're more active. And even in the late fall, you will get them. But the last couple of years I've been fishing, like, and really giving it to the pike early in the spring, and I noticed that the bass are acting very similar to, because you do have accidental catches of a bass when you're fishing for pike, and they literally like the same type of an action where what you were just saying, Jesse, like it's, you pop it and you wait 30 seconds. You know how many times I popped it 2-3 times and I waited about 30 seconds to a minute, and then I saw my line just going all by itself, and I'm like, there it is. And my buddy would be like, are you crazy? I'm like, just get the net. Like they hook themselves, like especially with jerk baits, right? But you don't know what it is. But most, like, it's the waters that I usually fish, it's 50-50 that it's a pike or a bass, because they live in the same type of water in my eyes, especially early in the spring. So they're not spawning; they're just feeding up to go to spawn. So they're also doing the same thing. They're feeding up. So when they're feeding up early in the spring to go spawn and do whatever their business, they're hungry too, but you got to present it to them differently. I don't think you're going to cast out a spinnerbait or a jerkbait and work it fast to the boat is going to get you as many bites as if you slow down. Right.
Exactly.
That's my personal opinion.
And that's what we're all here for, is Kris's personal opinions. That's going to be the episode title. Kris's personal opinions.
Yeah. People are going to be like, that guy's an idiot.
So to be fair, I will add to this. You have been one of the top requested, I'd say, non-celebrity guests that I've had people ask for.
That was like a backhanded compliment.
Wow.
You're not Bob
requested,
Azumi,
but you're not a celebrity.
Well, no, every time I say, who do you guys want to get on the podcast? And everyone's like, get Bob Azumi or get this guy, blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay.
Bob is cool.
We'll do our best.
Bob will take you 6 hours minimum. That's what you got to book him in for. Ain't nobody got time talking about fishing, man. That's one guy that you can sit there and like listen for hours. And every story is different. That's the best thing.
I'll just be like, and welcome Bob Azumi, and then we'll just turn off our mics and sit back and just.
Oh yeah. And
easy podcast for me.
Ask me a question, and then by the time you even try to ask him a question, he'll give you 16 answers already to his own question.
What we'll do is we'll record him first, and then we'll just ask like questions and cut them into the recording.
Yeah.
So we sound like we're
asking there,
really smart questions.
100%.
Yeah, you're just like, yeah, Bob, thanks for calling me awesome. Anyway.
Yeah, no, Bob is cool, man. Guys.
But anyway, we're not talking about Bob here, but I just wanted to say of the non-celebrity requests, Kris is one of the top ones. I actually was fishing with my buddy Ryan, who does a little bit of kayak fishing on the weekend, and I was telling him that we're getting on the podcast, and he's like, dude, that guy's a hammer. I was like, yeah, that's why he's coming on the podcast. No one wants to hear me and Andrew's advice on fishing for bass in the fall, because you know why? We're musky fishing. No one wants to listen to that.
Yeah.
So anyway, thanks again for coming on the podcast. We really
No
appreciate
problem. No, I love talking fishing. So
it. Yeah, it shouldn't be hard. Everyone, you've been on a few podcasts, but I talked to so many people that haven't been on a podcast before, our guests, and they're a little bit nervous. And I'm like, dude, it's literally talking fishing.
just
Like, you could have anyone on as long as they're not too boring.
yeah.
But
No,
don't worry.
I fish. I feel like I fish for a living, and sometimes because I'm out there so much, and also time on the water is huge to know what's going on the water. Like,
Absolutely.
like
Every guest that we've had in the last, I'd say, year, I guarantee every single one of them has said time on the water at least once.
yeah,
Every single one of them.
it's
So important.
huge. I'm on the water so much that it makes me sick. Like I sit there on the water, I'm like, okay, I'm doing maybe a little bit too much. And then next thing you know, the next morning I'm out there again. I'm like I was telling Andrew, like on Saturday I fished all day, and then Friday I fished all day, and then Sunday I'm like, I'm gonna give it a break. Sunday morning I'm in Newcastle looking for salmon with my kid. And I'm like, I told myself I'm gonna give myself a break, and it didn't work out.
Hey, it's
So
only a problem if you're trying to stop.
yeah, no
All
stopping
right,
here.
we're gonna get this rolling to the next section. We do appreciate again Kris coming on because he's actually like blocked out a little time between his work shifts here, so we really appreciate it. We're not gonna go too crazy far. So I thought we kind of covered baits and how to fish them, which is I think the most important part of what we talked about today. I thought we could talk briefly just as a safety thing. A lot of people listen to this podcast. I wouldn't want anyone to get into a dangerous situation. So if you're listening to this, we're going to talk about dealing with weather and conditions. Again, we're talking about a time of the year when things start to get colder than it is, especially when you're fishing out of a small boat. Things can get a bit sketchy, as Kris was mentioning, with big water, even some of smaller lakes. Winds can come out of nowhere, especially if they're coming the right direction down the lake. Some of the lakes are just like long chutes, and some of the waves, it's like a tsunami out there.
Big time.
You don't want to do that. But speaking of the good things about conditions and winds, kind of how it affects fishing, here's some situations that you could face as an angler in the fall. We're going to ask Kris how he would deal with this. The first one is a cold front. Say you're going out, you're going to fish the weekend. You don't really have the ability to pick which day. You have to go on Saturday or you have to go on Sunday. And Friday night, a cold front rolls in. What's your game plan?
Let's say you're either Andrew or Jesse. You can guarantee the day you have planned for fishing is
It
cold
rains.
front.
Yeah.
What do you do?
And
it's
it rains.
horrible. It's a horrible feeling. Everybody knows it. You know when you're in the back of your head, you're like, I'm going out there and it's going to be tough. Like it's not going to be easy. And then there's days where you go, holy crap, I'm surprised. This was the best day of fishing I've ever had. And you're like, how did this even make sense? But there's the tough times. The cold fronts you got to slow right down. That's it. That's all I could tell you. Slow. Don't move. Like it's terrible. And if one bait doesn't work, keep switching until something works. But work it extremely slow. Oh, sure, try running something fast for the first half an hour. I don't know how long you're going to go out fishing for, but I usually go anywhere from 6 to 16 hours a day. So there's never been like a 2-hour trip. So the first
you got to
half,
make it worth it, right?
Yeah, I plan for everything, right? Like I plan for the first hour, I'm going to be doing this. Even though it's a cold front, I'll do I'll throw the spinner bait, I'll throw the top water, I'll throw the jerk bait. If that doesn't work, then I move on to smaller baits like craw, something that not a craw, but what can I say? I'll start with a Senko. I'm not going to lie to you. Throw a Senko around. That doesn't work. Then I start moving to creature baits. I started using.
You don't have to tell us.
The Great Lake finesse stuff, like a lot of it. I know, but I use a lot of bugs. Like I use the Herbernite, like those Herbernite bugs that they have, and honestly, they've been kind of insane. It's when you throw that out there, but you got to leave it out there for 30 to 40 seconds. I don't know, for some weird reason, the smallmouth love it, and big largemouth.
Do you drop shot that?
Huh?
You drop shot that?
No, I just put on like a little jig head, small, like either 3/16 jig head or whatever, and I just cast it out, whatever that I feel like, I see a rock or something, I cast it by a rock, and then I just leave it. And no word of a lie, I've caught some big largies with it, which was a shocker, especially late in the fall. Like I throw it out there, and next thing you know, it just loads up. I'm like, come on, it can't be. Or the craziest things ever. Pike. Pike will hit me and my boat partner have the. I know I took his off topic, but the best bait for pike. I'm starting to believe that it's illegal in my head. That's how I feel like it. Drop shot. Drop shot. Pike eat drop shot like nothing. Like, and I'm talking about 3-inch baits. 15 to 20-pound pike will eat it, no problem. And I'm sitting there. I'm like, and the worst part is when you bring the bastard up and he's huge and he's got the little, drop shot hook on the side of his mouth, and you're like, how did you do this? Like, of all things, how? I have videos of this stuff where I'm like, no way. Like, no way. So, I don't know. With fishing, it doesn't matter. But yeah, the cold front, yeah, anyways, I took it off topic. But sorry. But yeah, the cold fronts,
that's okay.
I just downsized the baits. I start playing with a lot of little swim baits. With cold fronts, I don't really run them fast. Like, I'll run them nice and slow. Just don't reel in quick. Take your time. But at the same time, sometimes go crazy. Go quick. Go as fast as you can. It depends. You got to figure out what the fish, you got to try either one or the middle, whatever, but you got to figure out what the fish want. Once you get one, you kind of lock that in your head, and then you go to the next. And then it becomes a statistic in your head. Okay, they did that 3 times now. So obviously they want that way. Sure, it changes throughout the day sometimes, but not by much.
So what I'm hearing is the 2 worst scenarios if you're me: finesse fishing and slow reeling.
Oh yeah, it's horrible. I don't know how people do it. I do it, but I'm like, I watch myself. I'm like, this sucks. Like, this sucks.
Yeah. You ever see a grown man whimpering in his canoe or kayak?
Yeah. I'm literally going. I'm like, what am I doing? Like, why? Like, why? Why am I hurting myself? I can go to the shoreline and do it faster. Maybe I'll catch something, but the maybe keeps me going. No, you won't. It won't happen. So it won't happen. So you got to slow down. It's so messed up. Yeah.
So another question, I thought that it's a good question, is what's the best time of day in your opinion for fall bass fishing? Like, what time of the day are you like, all right, I got to be on my best spot at this time of day because that's the time.
I don't know why, but it's for my own feeling, and it's for my own. It's probably not the best time, but I want to be there when the sun breaks the horizon. Like, I just love the feeling of being in nature and feeling the sun hitting my face first thing. It's like, well, I mean, if you guys are fishermen and outdoorsmen, you know how it feels like to be out there in the nature first thing in the morning. Sure, you suffer to get up, but it feels amazing to be out there. And not that you're not catching. Some days I'll put on a show first thing in the morning, and then by 10 o'clock it's dead. But the first thing in the morning is always the time for me, even if fishing might not be the best, but because the water hasn't warmed up yet. What's the word? What's the saying? The early
bird gets the worm.
That's the one.
The early bass bird gets the Sanko.
Yeah, that's it.
Especially if Chris's kayak is floating nearby.
Yeah. I know people don't like to talk. A lot of people are like, all these guys that fish jigs and stuff like that. I don't fish a jig. I don't even fish. I don't even have any bait casters. I fish all spinning gear. And like, even with a frog, and people are like, you okay? And I'm like, buddy, I'll do exactly the same thing you will do over there. That's not a big deal. I'll pull the frog out of the craziest, thickest stuff
that sounds like done. Andrew.
So
that was Andrew until like 5 years ago.
Now I love bait casting. Now I love BFS because I can do bait casting what I used to have to do with spinning reels.
Yeah. You could, yeah, I still use them once in a while, but I got rid of all of them. Like, I'll do exactly the same thing with all my other stuff. So I don't try to hurt myself in the head. I see when my boat partner goes through some days, and I'm like, his name is Tony, and I'm like, you suck. You tied up all these reels, and 3 of them are like, he's pulling the line out, and I'm like, sucks to be you, bud. And I'm just casting in front of him. I'm like, get off the trolling motor. Let's go to the back.
Yeah. Well, that's a classic example, though, of using what works for you, right? Like,
yeah,
I think a lot of people think there's rules in fishing. Like, there is some rules, like legal rules, right? But when it comes to your preference of fishing gear and stuff like that, there's no rules. Like, everyone's like, oh, you have to use this for that, or you have to use this for that. You don't. Use what makes you happy and what you're comfortable using. And as you can see, like, you could probably have some guys being like, oh man, I can't believe that guy doesn't use bait casters. Yeah. Well, apparently he was one of the top kayak anglers in Canada 2 years ago. So I think he knows what he's talking about. He's just smiling there.
Yeah,
Anyway.
my buddies, they always comment on that part. But then I outfish them, and then they're like, "Okay, I'll shut up," and I'm like, "Yeah, you should."
He bought another spinning rod the next day.
Yeah.
So we do actually have some questions from viewers that we'll do very quickly, but I thought we could do one more question, focusing more on the tournament kayak fishing, because a lot of people are getting into that. It's becoming very popular. Would you recommend getting into kayak tournament fishing?
Would I recommend it? Yes, because that's like your first, as a kayak angler, like it's your first kind of step to get into like getting somewhere. Like with the series that I fish, like they have a lot of events. They also have a lot of prizes just for showing up. So in my eyes, even if you might not be able to, you know, win some, like being the best angler there, but you can still win some prizes just for showing up. Like there's GoKBT has some serious prizes. Like the last tournament, they're giving away like a Old Town Sportsman kayak, like a $4,000 kayak with an autopilot like trolling motor, and that's just being given away by the fact that you entered into one of the tournaments. So you have a chance at winning something like that. It's pretty, like, kayak angling is, I want to say, like the shizne. Like it's got some cool prizes. You know what I mean? That's got the prize. I used to fish out of a boat with a partner. And guess what? By the time you invest money into pre-fishing, by the time you invest money into gas in the boat, by the time sometimes you have to stay over somewhere, you have to whatever, and then you win $4,000. I know. Then you have to split that money. Then you have to see how much money. Now I'm talking about the seriousness of the situation. If you get into that high of a level, in the kayak you invest $100, and then okay, the gas in the car, very likely if you got the kayak, depending on what kind of kayak you got. Like I started with a $3,000 kayak, then I moved up to a $4,400 kayak. I bought everything used. I didn't buy it right straight from the store. But
Didn't you buy Kyle's kayak?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, that was the $4,400 kayak. Yeah, that was the
Kyle Crothers in the CanCast podcast sells his kayak to Kris.
Yeah, and then I start winning.
I thought he would have gave you a better deal than that. That's a shame.
Please. Yeah, no, that's so. He got back into it. I don't know if you guys seen it, but he just got back.
Yeah,
into
I saw he
kayak
picked
fishing.
one up the other day.
Yeah, and then the first question was, he goes, "Hey, you still got my the kayak, the cart for the kayak? Because this one doesn't have it, so I need it back." I was like, "Oh yeah, I still have it actually." So
I'd have been like, "No, I lost it."
Yeah, I should have said that. He apparently has like 6 of them. Anyways, but yeah, for people to get into kayak fishing, I think it's the first kind of step to getting into competitive, any type of fishing. You don't have to go into all of them, but if you have your favorite lake, try it, see how it works. It is a little bit difficult in the sense of when you're trying to, in a bass boat, you take the fish, you put it in the live well. All you got to do is just pick them out and kind of do your upgrades and do whatever. In the kayak event, you got to measure it on the board, and that's a lot more difficult, I think, than anybody thinks it is. Because the amount of times I got stabbed just putting a fish on the board, it's insane. Like my thumbs, by the end of the day, they're bleeding everywhere, and it's not because it's just the fish are just that active. So, but yeah, no, kayak fishing is definitely the first step, I think, if you want to get into any competitive fishing. And then if you start liking it and then something happens, like you win an event, like first event that I ever entered in a kayak event, that's what got me hooked. We went to Lake of Bays, and it was the top water spot that I always have. And the tournament started at 6:30 in the morning. I got out there at 5:30, and my spot I thought it was 45 minutes away. So I was going to get there before the tournament starts. Well, an hour and 50 minutes later, I get there, and I'm like, I had to paddle out there. I'm like, holy crap. I'm like, this is insane. So anyways, I started fishing. I started catching fish one after another. And from 7, I think 10 to 7 or whatever it was, 10 to 7 to about 7:30, I won the tournament. Didn't even upgrade for the rest of the day. By 1 o'clock, I was heading back to the boat launch, and I said, whatever happens, happens, because I didn't have any more power to do it, because it was my first time ever fishing in a kayak tournament. I had no plan. I just knew that I was going to fish that one spot. Whatever happens, happens. I end up winning it, and the prize was pretty nice. Like the money was good, like $2,800 for $80 entry. So again, it was my favorite lake, one of my favorite lakes, and that's how it got me hooked up. honestly, if I would have done not too good in that tournament, I probably would have started looking at it saying, it's not worth it. It's whatever, right? But then one tournament led to another, and I started making money during it. And next thing you know, I'm here. Like I'm talking about fishing because I like to do it, but there's success to it if you spend enough time and you have enough experience.
Absolutely.
So,
and I feel like too, like I used to have a kayak, and now I have the flatback canoe that I fish mostly out of. But I've talked to and I fished with a lot of kayak anglers over the last few years, and every single one of them that I talk to, they're like, "You should get a kayak." And I'm like, "Why?" And they're like, "Dude, you can enter the tournaments. It's even if you don't win, it's fun. It's
fun.
exciting. You meet a lot of great people. The entries are not bad. The prizes are amazing." And a lot of the people that fish these tournaments, yeah, like they probably will admit to themselves, like, "I'm never gonna win," right? That would be me if I entered. I'm not gonna win, but you may have personal
if you have
goals.
the day of your life?
You never know, right?
Right, and that's the craziest part. You go into this, the honey hole that you and Andrew found, and then next thing you know, the fish decided to bite that day, and you're like, "Oh my god!"
Yeah,
and I did it out of a kayak. It's like, holy crap! So
for sure. So it's definitely something if you're thinking about getting into it. I would definitely talk to someone like Kris or other people that are in the kayak the tournament scene, because I haven't heard anything bad. But maybe one or two things of just people being frustrated because they're just starting to use a kayak as opposed to a boat, and they're like, "Oh, it's tiring," and all that stuff. But everyone that I know that does it, and again, like you said, you don't have to fish every tournament. You just fish the ones that you want, or fish the ones that you might want to be close to or something like that. But it's something that a lot of people enjoy. And in the future, when I do get a kayak, because I do plan on getting a kayak again, I might do some tournaments. It's always interesting to see how you'd rank up. And I know if there's 80 people in the tournament, I'd probably be around 78 because one guy got diarrhea in the morning and some guy broke his rod.
Yeah, I'd be 79 because of that.
There's no chance. I've seen you guys' videos. You guys actually get some good fish too. So it's not. it's. I'm telling you, it comes down to confidence and luck. But like, it's still fishing. Fishing is fun, and if you put a little bit of competition behind it, it makes you, I think, that much. You start getting beyond average because the competition part makes you go like make decisions, better decisions, sometimes worse decisions.
Beyond average. That's going to be the episode
average,
title.
Yeah.
Beyond average with Kris Totosko.
Yeah, beyond
All right.
average.
To jump into our last part, we have a few questions that I put on Instagram. I said, ask a local hammer a question about fall fishing in Ontario, I guess. The way that we do this is you have to answer it in 30 seconds or less, but I'm going to challenge you to answer it in one sentence. Okay? So these are all just random questions from some of our Instagram followers. This is a question from some guy, just some random code. So he said, pick one technique or lure type to eliminate from your arsenal for fall fishing. So I guess going from summer into fall, what is one technique that you just don't use anymore?
Well, frog fishing.
Done. Yep. I was going to say, yep. Even if we don't want to, sometimes we try to force it.
I haven't learned that lesson yet.
Yeah, you got to do it. That's frog fishing. You got to take it off the table. Well, don't get me wrong. If there's some healthy lily pads, you can stick it for a little bit longer.
Don't tell me that, Kris. Don't tell me that.
Speaking of that, here's a question from Eastern Ontario Bass. He says, how late is too late to throw frogs?
End of September. Probably
I was going to say time. Like October is the like time that I leave them at October. Home.
But it's only if you find some healthy stuff, and that's it. Like healthy weed I'm talking about. If you find some healthy lily pads for some random reason, throw the frog. But you'll know right away that there's nothing there.
True. Here's a question from Ben. He says, why would you bass fish when you can musky fish? And I'm going to answer this one. That's fine, Ben. Let them bass fish. More musky for us.
Yeah. Keep musky to yourself, guys.
Yeah, we'll take it. It's fine. Angling Art, who was actually our guest last episode, he said, less bass episodes, more steelhead. We do have a steelhead episode coming up, so hang on for that.
Yeah, steelhead.
Here's a question from Jack M. He says, how do you find fish without electronics or with basic, like a Striker 4 or something like that? You can answer this in more than one sentence.
Yeah, I usually look like I said, I start shallow and then work my way out. I'll look for, those on the graph. I won't look up on the graph, but I'll look what's happening on the shoreline and then move away from the shoreline. As I'm going out, I'll see where the weed lines kind of end, and then that's what I'll kind of pay attention to. Possibly look at a map beforehand and know where there's the deeper drop-offs, where there's the shallow, the shallow area of the lake, especially like if you know that there's end of the lake is only 4 to 10 feet. That's more likely where the bait fish will be. That's more of a knowledge that you just kind of pick up off the internet before you get there. You know where the shallower areas of the lake will be, and if they're not producing, then you kind of just mark the points before you get there of the electronics. And you just pay attention to that. Like you kind of know, okay, I just did the 4 to 10 feet. There was nothing there in that part of the lake. So then you find 6 to 15 feet area somewhere on the lake, and you try concentrating on that. If that doesn't work, well, then you're going to have to move to 15 to 30 feet and hope for the best, because that's when it's up to whatever kind of baits you're going to have to throw to get down there. Like not a lot of people carry that type of equipment to, and then patience.
Awesome. And to add to that, I'd say if you don't have electronics, like we said, Navionics on your phone, great app, super, super helpful for a lot of different species. But as well, like me and Andrew have found some pretty good spots on lakes using Google Maps.
Yeah.
Like we'll
100%.
zoom in and sometimes you're like, oh, it looks like there's like a shoal that comes up there. It could just be a cloud. Who knows? Or like a shadow. And sometimes we'll go and it'll be like, we saw that from space. This spot better be good.
My last event right now is on Georgian Bay. People think I look at the graph. I don't look at a graph. I barely ever look at my maps. I go on Google Maps and I look for shoals that kind of stick out of the water. And then I mark those shoals I take a picture. Don't even want to show it right now, but I take pictures of shoals where they are zoomed in on my phone, or like bays that kind of like dictate of what's in them. And I mark it sorry, I didn't show it, but like points and shoals, like what's shallower, which bay, and I'll go and okay, that's where it's happening in my head, and I'm gonna go there and I'm gonna check that out. And then if that doesn't work, then I'm gonna go to the deeper water or whatever it's gonna have to happen. That was actually Lake of Bays, but yeah, I mark out a lot of shoals, and it's like there's the can't show you that because
that's okay.
It's still
you can show us after.
No, because I
don't mind me just pinning those GPS coordinates.
I'm telling you guys, it's that tournament means so much to me because I want to win that Angler of the Year again.
Yep. Well, may the force be with you.
I just don't want to. Not that I don't want to show it to you guys. I will show it to you. I will show you every single spot of where I'm going to do. It's just I don't want to show it to anybody yet because I'm going to go pre-fishing and I don't want it to suck. And if it's good, well, then it's
So I think the moral of the story of that question,
do research
and the
before
answer
you
you
go.
just gave is do research, but you don't need fancy tools. Like we always say that, like we don't have live scope. A lot of people that we know that have live scope now, they'll tell you, like, man, like these guys smack fish. They were smacking fish before they had live scope. Live 100%. Scope, it's a very polarizing topic, but you don't need it to catch fish. You can have the most basic technology, like your smartphone, which everyone has, or Navionics, something like that, or even just a simple 2D fish finder. Like me and Andrew had the Striker 4, the little Garmin fish finder like that for like 5-6 years before we even got something bigger.
But you told you the depth of the water.
Yep, and if there's weeds on the bottom.
And that's it. And that's all, honestly, that's all you know sometimes, and that's all you need to know. Or you can just look over the side of the boat. Sometimes the water's clear enough, and you're like, okay, there's some nice weeds. Oh, wow, that looks cool. And again, like I said,
sometimes Andrew just dunks his head in the water.
Oh, I bet.
I go for a swim.
I bet.
But I would say, like, for me, having been on boats with it, too, and again, not to drag this on at all, but if you gave me the option of you could either fish with live scope in a boat, and that's what you get to use, or you can do prep work and look at Google Maps, look at Navionics, and then go there with 2D sonar, I 100% would be choosing the second option. You can eliminate so many sections of the lake by looking at the maps,
100%.
looking at stuff like that. Whereas if you have live scope, but you never looked at a map for that lake before, and you go out there, you're still going to be at a huge disadvantage, wasting a lot of time looking around on empty water when you could easily look and say, hey, that looks like a prime spot because it's access to deep water off a point with likely green weeds. good current. Like, oh, those are the things you can look for and find on a map without using live scope.
100%.
Yeah.
Live scope is just a tool, like an extra tool that I use, and I use it. Not all the tournaments. Like we had Skugog 2 weeks ago. Like, how are you going to use live scope? Good luck. You can. Don't get me wrong. There's guys doing it, but most of the time you're fishing 4 to 6 feet of water, and guess what? You can use live scope for 6 feet of water, but it's
on Skugog. Where are you finding 4 to 6 feet of water?
Yeah, that's true. It's
I would have said 0 to 3 feet, but yeah.
Yeah, 0. Like, honestly, the whole time I was literally in like 2 feet of water the whole day.
Yeah.
Well, live scope shows about 3 feet in front through weeds. Like,
yeah, exactly. The deepest, like the shallowest spot I ever used it was actually probably in Texas in about 6 feet of water, and I could tell where there was fish. But it was bare land. It was just trees, and you can kind of see fish in between trees by accident. But it's a lot harder to use when you got to kind of dial it in a little bit more. But it's again it's a tool to have, but it's not. You have to have it. Believe me, I don't even see fish most of the time. I see structure on it, and that's what in my head. The first thing in my head is if I see structure, there's got to be something on it. It doesn't have to show a little blub or whatever. It's just if there's structure, there's fish. You can see that on 2D though, so it's the same as not having it.
Exactly. So to wrap up this episode, again, we'd like to say thanks to Kris for jumping on the podcast. Again, me and Andrew, the last year, we've had a lot of guests on, and that's just because me and Andrew are boring sometimes. So we like to have on local guys and girls that are absolute weapons. If you have any other people that you would recommend, because Kris was highly recommended to come on the podcast. Like, people wanted him to come on. And
Thanks, guys.
I was just like, who the heck is, just kidding. I knew who he was.
Yeah, we follow each other like on Instagram and everywhere. So yeah, I see what you guys are doing.
If you guys that are listening or guys or girls have any suggestions, I've had a few really good ones that we have in the works coming up in the next few months or the next 6 months anyway. Send us a message. Go on our Patreon. We have a link down below in the show notes. If you go on our Patreon, there's like a chat feature. You can send us a chat and be like, hey, I'd love to see, Joe Schmo on the podcast. That'd be great. We'll see what we can do. Some people are boring, so we can't have everyone on, but Kris was good. So anyway, we'd like to end this episode. I didn't warn Kris again, but we have the quote of the week. And to handle that is Kris Totosko.
I know so my quote of the day is, I don't know. For me, there's a lot of things that happen to my life, and a lot of things that happen on the water. I feel like happen for a reason. There's been a lot of, like, Chris Johnson just won Angler of the Year, and he talked about how there's been a lot of last key bites at the end of the day, and that has happened to me a million of times. Not million, but tens of times now at the end of the day. And when I'm out there, I'm all by myself in the kayak. I think of one thing, and it's kind of crazy, but God is great. That's what I always say when I catch a fish, and I always thank God for everything that I do. I know it's
nice,
a little bit different, but that's my saying. Like, God is great. I wish I had a GoPro in my kayak. There's days where I catch a fish, and I'm like, and I call my wife right away. I'm like, you won't believe it. That happened again. Like, last 20 minutes of the day, I caught a big fish. I'm like, God, thank you, God.
You got to stick it out and never give up.
Yeah. But it's like, somebody's like watching me. I'm telling you, it's so weird. Somebody's either like,
that's me. I'm in a boat with binoculars watching you.
No.
To see exactly where you're fishing.
You could. Like, I'm not going to lie. That's great. But somebody watches over me or something, and it helps me out there.
Awesome.
God is great, beer is good, and people are crazy.
That's it. People are definitely crazy.